Today, we have on the show Ben. Welcome, Ben, to the Overpod.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, let's get into it right away. So, I want to ask you, what's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you while working remotely?
The most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me so that's a good question. It hasn't happened too much that I've been embarrassed during work because I feel like for a lot of remote workers, it's pretty empty. Your days, you're just kind of working alone in your own spare time. The most embarrassing thing, probably when I actually made a YouTube video about this when I almost got caught being
Yeah.
overemployed because I had two meetings at the same time. And I kind of had a mix up where I was wearing the wrong headset and I left my video on at the one meeting and went back and forth and everyone could see it right in front of them. And I kind of had to play it off and I kind of escaped out of it successfully. But if you want to hear that full story, you can also check out our video on that and you'll get more of the details.
Oh, that's good. That's great. It's great. So, yeah, I've been actually receiving multiple questions from our clients that we have, and the main client issue that I faced was how do you negotiate salary, right? So, what I usually tend to say to my clients, I'm like, if you're going to apply for a job, never give a number first. And I know you have a big expertise in this, so I just want your advice on how to negotiate salary.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also recommend that a lot, and we recommend that to our clients. Don't ever come up with a number yourself unless you're going to overshoot it at least. So you never really can tell for sure what companies offer for certain positions, especially if the company's a little less known and they don't have salary information online on those platforms. So let's say you think it's paying maybe 80 to 100K. Don't go in there obviously asking for 80K if they ask you what your salary expectations are, because more likely than not, that's what they'll offer you if you do end up getting the offer. So what I recommend is either push back on them and ask them what they're offering. And from there, you kind of hold the power, right? From there, you can either say, "Oh wow, they're actually offering way more than I expected. This is good enough for me," or whatever. And if they're not, you can always ask for more. And again, this will always depend on your position. So, like, let's say you're in a scarcity situation where you already only have one remote job and you're not making that much. Whatever they really offer you, just you can still negotiate. I don't recommend not go negotiating at all, but don't get too greedy and just kind of go with the flow if you're in the beginning stages of overemployment or things like that, right? If you know you can negotiate and you know they do offer more, if you do ask for more, then do it. But again, go through it like slowly and calculated. Don't get too greedy.
Great, great, great analysis there. Another popular question I get is how do you see the future of remote work evolving and what impact do you think this will have on the trend of working multiple remote jobs?
So I guess to start, let's talk about, is remote work permanently here, right? And I think a lot of people think it is. People have kind of decided that. But I think one big tell sign is leasing spaces for commercial real estate, how companies have actually already begun selling off their real estate and moving to use some more platforms like WeWork, where they kind of just rent offices here and there when needed. But for the most part, they've actually began selling a lot of their buildings, things like that. And I think we all know it's here. How it's going to evolve is kind of an interesting question because for now it seems pretty simple, right? They have untapped resources to get remote workers from kind of all around the globe, right? And from there, it doesn't really need to evolve too much. Like right now, it's kind of in a good state. And the only thing that might actually create some issues is things like overemployment. So I think that's where it's possible things might evolve and change. In terms of how that'll happen, I don't think anyone can tell because the only way you can really implement some type of overemployment precautions is going to create huge invasions of privacy, and either workers are going to push back on that, or it just won't even be legal to implement at all. So I'm not sure if that'll ever be successfully implemented.
Great. So, uh, just knowing you, the great Ben, what's your morning routine? Not even your morning routine. What's your routine day to day, right? What do you do in your daily life to manage working multiple jobs? I know this is probably going to be a popular question among our viewers because what do you do when you wake up, right? What do you do after work? What do you do between that? How do you get everything done? Do you work out? Do you eat well, right? These are all great questions to ask. So, what's your routine throughout the day?
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to understand that working multiple remote jobs does not it's not supposed to limit your life in terms of your jobs become your entire life. If it is, you really shouldn't be overemployed or you're working the wrong jobs and you need to find new jobs and quit those bad ones because the whole idea of overemployment was being able to double or triple your salary while still being within a 40 to maybe 50-hour work week max, right? If you're working 80-hour, 90-hour weeks, like after hours, on the weekends, what's really the point of being overemployed, right? At that point, you're not really overlapping the time and you're just draining yourself and you won't be able to do that for years and years to come. So I personally do enjoy exercising, socializing, hanging out with friends, in terms of routines, pretty basic stuff,
Yeah.
work out almost every day, things like that. And I think everyone can find that routine that fits them and their lifestyle as long as they get that stuff in. And always, I just want you guys to focus on making sure there's a balance, right? And obviously, in the beginning, you might not have that balance, maybe in your first couple weeks at your multiple remote jobs, but eventually you want to fit that in.
Yeah. So, like, what's your routine though? Like, what time do you personally wake up? What time do you log into work? Do you go downstairs, get some breakfast? Like, what do you do? What's your day looking like?
So for me, I usually wake up around 6:30 a.m. or 7 a.m. just to work out earlier in the morning. From there, I begin my jobs a little later, a couple hours later in the morning, and then from there, I just work until whatever it takes, maybe 3, 4, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. some days. And after that, just kind of get some errands done in my daily life, things like that. And if ever there's things going on in my social life, do that. And then that's how I really find my schedule works out best.
Nice. Do you have a go-to snack or beverage when working remotely? Like something that you always plan on buying, drinking, just something that's your own personal touch?
Yeah, I drink 12 Red Bulls a day, and I find that if you don't drink 12 Red
Mm,
Bulls a day,
okay.
it's a lot harder to perform. A lot of people are scared to consume a lot of caffeine, but I think that's a wrong way to look at it.
All right. So here's a bit of a fun question that I got from one of the viewers here. If you could have any fictional character as a remote work colleague, who would it be and why? Give it a thought.
So that's a really good question. I think just off the top of my head, because I don't really watch too many fictional character shows, I would say James Bond. And that might be a little confusing to hear at first, but if you really think about it, James Bond would be the perfect remote work colleague because he gets his work done and he just shuts up, right? He doesn't bother you with stupid small talk or uh, implementing extra company routines or procedures to make sure things are optimal. No, he just gets his work done. He shuts up. He doesn't bother you. And I think everybody loves that in a remote work environment. I'm not saying you shouldn't be friendly or social at all with your colleagues, but for the most part, people just want to do their work and log off.
All right. So, as our viewers may or may not know, that we do offer a class, a master class on overemployment. So, Ben, could you just give a couple thoughts on that and what it could provide you with and how it could help?
For sure. So if you are not overemployed, or maybe you already are overemployed, but maybe you're struggling, or you just want to optimize your overemployed journey, you can check out the Overemployed Masterclass. That's linked in the description box and the pinned comment down below. So in there, we provide over 2 hours of video modules, and we kind of teach you how to become and how to stay overemployed, as well as day-to-day work tactics to optimize your overemployed journey. And you can check that out in the description box and the pinned comment down below.
And if you guys want to take it to the next level, also know that we do also indeed offer one-on-one coaching. It pretty much provides everything that you need. You also get the masterclass also for free, including in the price. So, any thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, I also really recommend the one-on-one program if you want some initial help to kind of navigate the whole world, resume help, knowing where to go, what fields, maybe you want to change skills so you can go into a different field. That's where we'll help you in the one-on-one program.
Great. Okay, so another famous question that I've been receiving, right, multiple times. This is from one of our viewers as well. How do you network and build relationships with other remote workers and professionals in your field? And what benefits does this provide?
Yeah, so I think this is a really good question because a lot of people, especially if maybe they're new graduates or recently graduated, they kind of struggle with this because since the pandemic kind of went into a remote work world and they never really had the opportunity other than maybe past internships to actually network and make strong relationships and connections in the professional world. And the biggest reason for that is because the lack of in real life interaction, right? It's just a known fact that sitting over a Zoom call with colleagues is not going to have the same impact on you compared to working in an office and interacting face to face with these people and making more meaningful connections. Now, it doesn't mean you can't network and connect that way over Zoom calls and things like that. You actually definitely can. And the only thing is, it just requires more work. So it needs more initiative from your side and your colleague side. And if you find that sometimes maybe that's lacking, if your team or company does offer in person networking events or social events with just your specific team, I actually, contrary to what other people might say in the overemployed world, I do recommend actually going to those because it does build relationships. Obviously, be careful about having to attend those too often because that'll be an issue. And also be careful if you know there might be some close interaction with other companies that you work with. And if the people know each other, that could cause issues. But for the most part, that won't be an issue. And I really recommend it because you can build those relationships and it actually feels good too. It does get sometimes kind of boring when you're just sitting in a room all day on a desk over Zoom.
Yeah, great answer, great answer. So, another question I want to ask you here, Ben, is what's the best remote work related book, or it doesn't have to be necessarily a remote book, right? Or podcast that you've read or listened to, and something that could really help or positively influence our viewers.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of books that kind of will put you in the mindset of wanting to become overemployed. And even the overemployed masterclass, we even in there we talk about why you should become overemployed, not just how to do it and why you should how to succeed, but also the philosophy behind it. And that's kind of very important because whatever you want to achieve in your life, it kind of starts with your belief system and your mindset and understanding what you can achieve. And there's a lot of books out there. One book, actually, I don't know the name off the top of my head. I'll put it in the description box below. But it's kind of based on statistics and risk. And it's a computer science book, essentially, but it kind of displays why you should make decisions. And overemployment is one of those where a lot of people get worried about getting caught and losing everything they have. But at the same time, they know that if they're remote, they can work multiple jobs. And they're kind of stuck in a dilemma of what decision should they make? Should they go for the riskier position of making double or triple their income, or should they not? And if you really think about it, and if you're in a position where you don't have an extreme amount of responsibility to bear, maybe you don't have 10 kids and a mortgage and all this car debt, then it always makes sense to do it, right? The risk always is not as bad as the reward. And you kind of have to put yourself in that mindset of taking that risk to achieve that higher success.
All right, great answer. So I'm just going down my list of questions here from our viewers, and one that sticks out to me that I think I really want to answer with your help here is so what's the most unexpected or expected benefit that you've experienced from working remotely, right? So I'll go ahead and answer this question myself first here. So as you know, Ben, yourself, that when you work one job for a really long time, you kind of get really good at it and you kind of automate the job itself, right? So at that point, I don't feel like you're not really learning anything anymore. It just becomes you're like a robot at that point, right? You go in, you do this, you do that, you do this every single day. This becomes ABCs.
Yep.
So the biggest thing, unexpected benefit for me was I have been extremely stressed out, not because my multiple jobs have been hard. I've been stressed out because my stress tolerance has been low my whole life. I don't know if you could relate to that or not, but this is the biggest unexpected benefit I've had. So now let's say 3 years, 2 to 3 years later of working remotely, now I have the stress of one job while working two jobs. Right, it's not as stressful anymore. So I think this is a really important skill to have as a human being to keep your stress levels as high as they can be. And yeah, so what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And not even just exactly about stress levels, but also when it comes to the amount of satisfaction you get and things like that. So I think it's people don't really know this too much, but they might have heard about like video games or watching pornography or other things like that. But everyone kind of has a baseline where they operate mentally, right? So think people call it like a dopamine baseline or whatever you want to call it, just the way your brain works and how it operates. So if you get used to achieving a certain thing or working a certain way, your brain is gonna expect that from you constantly. And once you stop doing that, it'll try to get back to that stage. And eventually, if you ignore your brain's calls for that, you'll return to a new baseline, and your new baseline will be what you're currently doing. So if you've always only worked one job and then you jump up to two jobs, first you'll be kind of shocked, and like you said, you'll have that huge amount of stress, but eventually your brain will adapt to it, and it'll actually seek it. So every day, even though you might be stressed, you'll be waiting for the next day to get into that work stage and working more and more. And once you drop, let's say, overemployment, let's say you go back from three or two jobs to just one, maybe in the beginning you'll be super stress free. You'll enjoy it, you'll love it, but eventually you'll kind of start working more at that one position, and your stress will kind of level out. You won't feel that difference as much because you really only feel that difference in between the stages. And that's why we recommend overemployment, because if you get that stress, that extra stress, it's not just about the stress, it'll also get you the benefit, right? You'll probably have that stress even at one remote job. But once you get used to it, you get used to the multiple jobs, you'll also have the added benefit of working multiple jobs by getting that multiple income.
Great. All right, here's a fun one for us here. Okay, so are you? I assume you're sitting at your work desk right now, right? Or are you
Nope.
not? Okay, this is a little bit difficult then. But what's the most interesting item you have on your remote desk? So I'm sitting at my desk right now. I'm just trying to look around. So out of everything I see here, I think the most useful and interesting item I have on my desk is a button. So a button, you may ask, what's this button for? So this is called a KVM switch, and this is probably the most vital piece of equipment that I own. It lets me transfer my keyboard and my mouse from one computer to another. So if I'm at J1, right, job one right now, I'm in a meeting, I'm writing something there, and I don't want to disconnect my mouse and my keyboard and connect it to the other laptop, I can just click that button. And this is called a KVM switch for those who want to search that up. Pressing that button switches my mouse and my keyboard to the other computer and monitor, and now I'm working on that one. Or you could have two laptops connected to one monitor and use a single mouse and keyboard for that monitor, right? So this is the single most interesting item I have on my desk. And yeah, what about
So
you? Think of
for
anything?
me, I
Yeah.
have zero interesting items on my desk. I have three laptops, sometimes two laptops, and that's all I use. So I actually don't use any external monitors, keyboards, mice, nothing. I have my
Wow.
personal laptop and my work laptops, and that is it on my desk, and it is empty. And I've had all that stuff in the past as well, but for me, I'm just at a stage in my work life where I feel more at peace with just
How,
laptops.
how do you combat, like, for example, I've done the same thing, but a friend of mine, which I already knew but didn't really care about too much, told me that he didn't know I was overemployed, right? But he came into my room and he saw that I didn't have any monitors or anything, and he basically said, he's like, "Are you stupid?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "You're looking down at your laptop all day." He's like, "Use a monitor. You literally have one. Use a monitor, right?" And I'm like, I like my life being simple. I like simplicity. I like waking up, logging onto my laptops, calling it a day, logging off, right? I don't want to be like clutter on my desk at all either. But yeah, so I did think about it one day. I'm like, maybe down the line, since I've literally not only working one job, I'm working multiple jobs, looking down at laptops all day for potentially, let's say, sometimes as low as 4 hours a day to as high as 10 hours a day, right? Will that affect my posture going down the line? So is that something you're concerned about, or not?
Yeah, I have terrible posture, and I just
Mhm.
suffer. Yeah.
Yeah. So so why don't you consider using a monitor?
Yeah, I don't really care about my posture at all, and I'm satisfied with that.
All right. Another, let's say, another alternative that at least I'm looking into right myself is a standing desk. I don't know if you own one of those or not, but if I am gonna, I like my whole setup of just using my laptops, right, and not my monitors. So I think I might just, like press the up button, stand, and just work like that. Then when I want to sit down, I can just put it back down again. I think that's one alternative for this, and especially for remote workers, right? Because like, hey, like we're spending most of our time indoors in our rooms, right? We probably tell ourselves that we're gonna go out for a walk during lunch or something, and especially if you're overemployed, you're not really gonna get that chance to do that, right? Because you're so focused on work, or
Yeah.
if you're probably gonna be hungry during that time as well. So I think that might be an investment worth having for anyone out there that wants to do remote work or wants to be overemployed. A standing desk indeed would help. Yeah,
For sure, I would agree. If you're gonna be spending upwards of 8 hours in your work setup, invest into what works for you.
great. Okay, let's see what else we have on this list here. Ooh, this one's a great one. If you could work from anywhere in the world, where would you choose to work and why?
So I actually have tried multiple things with this. I've tried working in very hot tropical places in different time zones, things like that. In places in other time zones where it's not as tropical, and then also in the local area where I'm originally from. And out of all those places, I always usually kind of recommend to just stay where you are at currently. You usually won't have that much enjoyment unless you have other people there in the same position as you. Um, it's mostly just because even though it might seem fun, to be in a beach area, like let's say you're working 2 jobs, the beach is 10 minutes away from your office, you'll get kind of bored of it anyways, right? You're not gonna be going to the beach probably every day.
Oh
It'll
yeah.
be nice for a few times, but you'll get bored of it, and then you'll just kinda wanna go back to your original routines and things that you were always used to.
I mean, so the thing I want to speak up about in regards to that is I live in a colder environment, right? And here, when I wake up in the morning, I really like to go outside and go for a walk. But during the colder climates, the winter time, I don't really get too much sunlight here, and it's pretty cold and dark. Sunrise isn't until sometimes 9:30 in the morning, and it kind of throws you off, right? You don't get your vitamin D in. You get pretty much, I would even say, depressed, right? Like there's so much money can do, right? It doesn't really matter that much. But if you're not getting your cortisol levels high in the morning, it's gets pretty depressing around here. So I would recommend, from my point of view at least, everyone's different, right? I would stay somewhere that's warmer, not obviously like tropical, right? There's a limit, but somewhere where the sun consistently comes up around the same time every single day, so I know what I'm getting myself into. And again, everyone's different. They have their own routine, the way they want to live their life. But for those people out there that really need sun in their life, I 100% really recommend picking an area. This is not even just overemployed related. It's just living somewhere where you wake up, you get your sunlight, right? And that makes the rest of the course of the day much easier.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think at the end of the day, the best part of all of this is which we kind of forget sometimes is that working remotely, we have that freedom, right? So I think whatever you end up choosing as your home base, just knowing that you've had the freedom to make that decision is very empowering and it feels amazing. And at the end of the day, you could always even just go back and forth between places, pick some places for this part of the year and another part of the year go somewhere else. And I think that's actually the most important, just knowing you have the agency to make that choice.
Great. So this is a question actually just for me that I'm thinking about right now. It's I never actually asked you this before. Have you ever potentially met a coworker that was overemployed or you thought was overemployed, right? But like, has any of your coworkers found or you found out that they're overemployed or not? Has that happened?
So this has never happened to me, but it's something that I kind of want everyone to think about. It's because it's a really good question. And if you are overemployed, you have to realize that what's stopping your boss even from being overemployed or your coworkers, right? You might be thinking, oh, I'm so sneaky, I'm doing this and I'm pulling it off, whatever. I'm not hurting anyone, but I'm making double the money. I'm getting paid even more than my manager. Well, maybe, but maybe you're not, right? Maybe your manager has 3 jobs. Who knows? And it's something that you have to kind of it's kind of like a narcissistic thing, right? It's not just all about you. The world doesn't
Exactly.
revolve around you. So there's other people that might actually be doing the same thing as you. They might even be doing it better. Have you ever had that experience where you found out someone has been overemployed?
Yeah, so, like, I'm almost 100% positive, like, almost there, right, that one of my coworkers actually is overemployed. So, honestly, being overemployed for such a long time, you kinda know the ins and outs of overemployment and some of the giveaways, right, of someone who could be overemployed. It's the stuff it's so funny, it's like, maybe if he is overemployed, this guy, he or she, if they're overemployed, I'm kind of upset with them. I'm like, "Hey, go on our goddamn YouTube channel and watch our videos because you're breaking every single goddamn rule in the goddamn book in overemployment, right? So this guy or girl, okay, he's a guy. I probably just gave that away anyway, so it doesn't matter. But so I have a meeting with this person every morning usually, right? And specific days, I think it falls on like a Wednesday, Thursday in the morning. He always gives the most stupidest excuses, right? Like I'm not talking about I have a doctor's appointment. This guy told me that I had a Windows update every goddamn week on freaking Tuesday or Wednesday. Is that not a giveaway for you? You actually believe that?
Yeah, that would be a terrible excuse to repeat.
Yeah, but then again, obviously, maybe he's probably like just like dropping someone off or something too, right? But then the same time on a different day, he gives an excuse about something else with a ridiculous excuse as well, right? And yeah, these are some just like little giveaways, pushing his work over to other people, even though I think he's underworking there right now, which he's smart then. This guy's smart. This guy's underworking there, getting his bank, probably working a second, third job, and that's the only giveaways I potentially have. But from what I can think from my head, right? But it's so hilarious. Imagine finding out your coworker is overemployed. It's like you can't even tell them, but you acknowledge each other, right? It's if I have doubts that he's overemployed, he probably has doubts that I am as well. But I have rules that I strictly follow. Again, this is another thing I want to talk about. There's rules that I follow strictly every single day. You got to be disciplined. You can never give in, right? I want you guys to know this one thing. If you guys are gonna hear one thing this whole podcast, remember this thing. If you're drunk, right? If you're high on dopamine, anything's going on, never, never, never tell your friends, anyone, that you work multiple jobs, right? Ben, I know you've probably been in a situation where you got close to telling one of your friends or someone you're drunk or something, and someone let them know, like, guys, this is what I'm doing. I'm overemployed. I'm doing this and that, right? Because that's just humans. That's what we want to do as humans. We love talking about ourselves. We love telling people about our awards and stuff, right? Ben, Ben,
Sorry, I was just busy texting my friends that I'm overemployed.
man, yo, that was a good one. Um,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I actually have. I mean, I agree with the general philosophy, especially in the beginning. I think I mentioned this in one of our videos. In the beginning, for the first maybe 2 3 months, don't tell people you're overemployed because you don't even know if you'll last in overemployment, right? Other than the fact of them exposing you or snitching on you or them knowing someone that works at one of your companies and just by mistake it slips out of their mouth, whatever. It's not even that. It's the added pressure, which is unnecessary, knowing that you've told these people, let's say you're making now $300,000 a year, and you've told them that, and maybe 3 weeks down the line, you have a new meeting that's can't be moved and it's absolutely necessary and it conflicts with your other company's absolutely necessary meeting and maybe you have to drop one of the jobs. And if that happens, you don't really want to be in that position where you feel that crumbling pressure, knowing that you're kind of living a lie after you told your friends, and you're gonna have to tell them, "Oh, I actually lost that job," and that's just gonna be a shitty feeling, right? Obviously, I'm not saying your friend will judge you or make fun of you, but either way, it'll be a shitty feeling knowing you've kind of told the world what you had, and now it's completely gone.
yep. All right, and that's our wrap for today's episode of the Overpod. I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion on working multiple jobs, multiple remote jobs, sorry, and found some helpful tips and insights for your own remote work journey. So remember to check out the masterclass in the link below in the description box or the link below. And thanks for tuning in.